right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Unwinding with Support Group. I am Arlene. I'm a LPC. My beverage tonight is it is Captain Morgan apple with apple cider. It's one of my favorite drinks. My guests tonight, I have two, are Kelly. She is also an LPC.
My beverage tonight is apple whiskey.
We're on an apple theme.
Mm-hmm.
And my other guest is Dr. Alex. I just like to remind everybody she's a doctor in traumatology because I just enjoy saying that. So, what is your beverage tonight, Alex?
I have the classic, the never out of style, the thing that you need because 75% of our body is water.
Well, always with the fancy water.
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to do without you and your water?
I don't know. Go to a drought, die.
All right. Well, today we are going to talk about treatment for trauma and PTSD. We've spent the last few episodes talking about trauma. And your cat was like, listen, I have things to say.
He wants to be involved. He knows about trauma. He listens to me talk about it all day.
He's like, listen, I got things. That was fantastic. But we are going to talk about treatment. We're going to wrap this up with talking about all the things we have really, but how to get treatment, where to go, the different kinds of treatment, what are the best forms of treatment for trauma and PTSD. And all three of us are trained in different forms of treating trauma, which is why we're all here to have this discussion. So, with that, I'm going to open it to wherever we want to go, ladies. Where would we like to start? We need to ask the cat.
Yep, we need to ask the cat. Where do we need to start? Do you know where we need to start? No. He said prolonged exposure. Which I just got certified in, by the way. I finished all of that. So all that training and whatnot.
That's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
That is exciting. All right. I know that Kelly and I are both also trained in prolonged exposure.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about what is then good for prolonged exposure and what's not, because not everything is good for prolonged exposure. So what are traumas that are good to be treated with prolonged exposure?
I found that well, that's a good question. And it gets really hinky to a point too, and I think it becomes kind of based upon at times therapist judgment. But sexual assaults I've done well with prolonged exposure. Some combat experiences I've done well with prolonged exposure. But the more compounded the trauma, sometimes you have to parse out, and it kind of becomes, a measure of figuring out which particular piece you're going to pick out and where and how and what that looks like. And it becomes, at least from my experience, I'm thinking of someone in particular right now who has had numerous sexual assaults across time that have kind of built upon each other. She's doing well, and her assessment, I mean, based upon her assessment scores and her, anecdotal, report in session has gotten, better across time. But it's been a difficult road, and I've had to pull from other modalities as well with them.
Yeah, I'll add in that it's from my experience, I also identified like concrete trauma
Mhm.
is better for PE. And what I mean is like emotional abuse is so much like it doesn't work for PE. There's not like an event.
Yes.
And with prolonged exposure, you're reliving like through the exposure, through the narrative, an event. And with emotional abuse,
I'll agree.
usually that's long standing, ongoing, and it's super nebulous because there are multitudes of like encounters. So that becomes harder. Um, and that would be like a better use of like EMDR, which we'll get into a little bit later. Uh, but it's concrete. It's got to be like this happened. You can go through it, even
Yeah.
if it's compounded, if you can parse it out to like a singular traumatic event, then you can be successful in it, whether that's, like you said, sexual assault or combat. Um, I've done, um, I've even done religious trauma with it because it was a singular, like we did a singular event, even though the religious trauma was like a lot of different events. We focused on one that was specifically traumatic and we're able to, work that because of how PE works. It
Mhm.
affected all of it. So you can use it in a variety of settings. It just has to be that concrete, tangible, for lack of other words, an event. I've used it with, like you said, like sexual assault, like rape, um, robbery,
Mhm.
um, other forms of violence. Uh, I've used it with domestic violence because we were able to isolate one specific
Mm.
instance. Um, that one was a little harder. We had to really do a trauma index and really work through it. Um, and I think the other like big thing for PE is you cannot be in active trauma.
No, no.
Like it cannot be occurring to be able to get into what like doing PE like at all. It has to have already occurred. You have to be out of it to be able to get through it, which isn't always the case for some traumas.
I agree with you on that. I I wonder about a lot of trauma treatments, including EMDR. Um, just from experience, being told that I couldn't continue my own EMDR from my own trauma because I was still actively engaged in a traumatic experience that I needed to see that through, i.e., a court, like a trial involving pressing charges against a perpetrator because it was continuing to re-traumatize me. So I had to kind of like hold off on the trauma therapy in order to not continue to re-traumatize myself. And I have yet, and Alex, you might know more about specific trauma therapies that are able to help while still engaged in trauma. I, TCBT might be one, but with EMDR, I was told that that was not something along with PE that could facilitate actively being involved in trauma.
So I haven't heard that with EMDR because what we could have done if I was your EMDR therapist, what I would have done is started at the beginning
Mhm.
and isolated the beginning events. And then as the new trauma came up, continue to desensitize it as it happened. Because you can do EMDR in the moment to alleviate distress and desensitize. So I'm not quite sure. But listen, every therapist has their own approach to it. Clinical judgment, therapeutic modalities. That's what makes the world go round. That's how we get new techniques, new, evolutions, involvement, developments throughout our, therapeutic modalities. So to each their own for sure. I would have had a different approach because I've done EMDR in the midst of like a divorce. They had their they were signing their papers the next week and they were like, I just need to desensitize it. I just need to desensitize it. We might not get it to go away, but we can at least desensitize it to where it's not all consuming if you're actively involved in it.
Right.
But that's just my humble opinion.
No, it's a valid opinion. Absolutely.
Says the doctor of
I know, right?
traumatology.
Listen.
This is her humble
Wear
opinion.
that proudly.
Yeah.
This is her humble opinion. But
Well, again,
no,
to each their own, different approaches. I think it's great to hear about different approaches and how different therapists go about, using these therapeutic modalities. Sorry, Arlene. Go ahead.
no,
Sorry.
you're good. You're totally good. No. I was just gonna say, like, I think sometimes therapists like shy away from active trauma because they're afraid they'll do more damage. And that's my personal experience just from what I know of supervising therapists.
Yeah.
Is that there is a fear of, like, if they're actively in it, they're already doing too much. And if we touch this, I'm afraid I will then re-traumatize them or I'll make the trauma worse. So I think that plays a part in like the clinical judgment piece. And so sometimes we run into that. But for me, the only therapy I know for trauma that is an active big no-no for like when trauma is occurring is PE. Because like you can do narrative therapy when it's occurring, you can do TCBT when it's occurring. Like those things all happen as they come. You can as like Alex said, you can do EMDR as well.
Yeah. And with EMDR, I like to throw in like some shadow work, some nervous system regulation, some vagus nervous system work, some DBT if needed, or CPT, trauma focused motivational interviewing. I found that could be very helpful. So there's like a lot of things. I love to mix modalities because EMDR on its own, lovely, wonderful class act for, therapy.
You're gonna offend the EMDR community right now?
But I like to pair different modalities with it. I love it. I love to utilize the 8 phases of EMDR and then go into some shadow work to start healing some of that internal stuff that might be left over, because we can take that memory and desensitize it with EMDR, but that doesn't mean you are completely healed from it.
Amen.
So I like to throw in some other things. I'm like, yeah, just because we went through EMDR and we desensitized this, or we went through prolonged exposure and we desensitized this and we got you through it, doesn't mean our work's done.
Exactly. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I really enjoy visualizations to a point, like not so much taking a person back to the visual, like with prolonged exposure sometimes, but like altering the memory and giving a person power back, because I'm thinking of someone in particular where the memory was so strong and so powerful that I was kind of like, and I borrowed from a technique someone taught me. And it was, if anybody out there is familiar with the Matrix, it's kind of like, you have those scenes where they like pause and they can, alter and spin and stuff. And I was like, just visualize spinning the memory and changing it to where you have the power. What do you see? And this person in particular, put on, they saw themselves put on a hazmat suit, and they went through the memory of their particular trauma and they hosed it down, and they regained their power over that memory. And it was such an enlightening moment for them that, like, in that, that moment, while they weren't completely healed, they reported feeling like, oh my gosh, for the first time, I feel like I'm not afraid of this particular memory because I feel like I have some sort of power over it anymore. It doesn't feel as looming and as like it's stalking me anymore. And so I think mixing modalities is very, very helpful.
I agree. I mean, like PE in itself is CBT, right? Like it's exposure therapy, which is CBT, which is, versions of mindfulness
Mhm.
and all of those great, wonderful things that are that anyways. So adding more in, because we're also talking about acceptance of like what has occurred and processing that. So adding more into that is never like it's always going to be there.
Mhm.
One size does not fit all.
No, that's true.
It's never going to one size fit all. I think what I like most about PE, honestly, and I've done some other modalities of treating trauma, and I'll talk about memory reprocessing in a second because that's fun. Because it's just fun. But what I like most about PE is the success rate of it, of like how quickly it works and how like at the end of it, how many people just no longer meet criteria for PTSD. That in itself is phenomenal to me, which is why I prefer PE just because of that,
Mm.
uh, because of how it works in that way. Uh, Now, again, it's not meant for every trauma, but it's also super intense and it requires a lot of work, right? It's an exposure. We're walking through the trauma memory regularly, all the time, over and over and over again. Um, and and that's a lot. And that's the homework, top of other things, right? Like so it is a lot. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody who's like, I need to do this and five other therapies. No, this is it. This is like the only therapy. But that's why I prefer it. Like, it's like I guess my go-to if we had one. Um, I enjoy treating trauma, um, because it helps people get so much better because it's the thing that generally drives people into all the things, um, why things are not okay. It's the underlying thing for all the things of other mental health stuff. Um, but it's my go-to because it works so effectively. And again, all the all the stats at the end of it are most people don't meet criteria for PTSD anymore. And that is a fucking phenomenal thing. Like if you can give anybody that, I'd love to give everybody that. So,
Agreed.
um, but memory reprocessing, let me tell you about how much fun I had learning this and doing it with a client. Um, so essentially, it is envisioning yourself as an animal, an insect, something. Okay. And you walk through the trauma as that, visualizing that, how that, whatever, would respond.
Mhm.
Right. Now, depending on the trauma, depends on, right? My client was a bear and she mauled the shit out of her brother because that was who traumatized her. Um, but it regained her power, right? The first time we went through it, that's what happened. The second time we went through it, she was able to like it was less of that, right? She was able to take her power back by envisioning she was something more powerful than she had been in the moment. So very similar to PE, but able to do, right? Over time, she was then able to walk through the memory as herself and it not be as traumatic just by envisioning that she was something like else, something powerful, something big, something huge, something would basically touch me and I'll smack the shit out of you,
Mhm.
which is, you know, that lack of power is often hard in trauma. So, but I promise you, when I said, "Hey, this is what we're doing," her response to me is, "I'm sorry, the fuck we're doing?" And when she listens to this later, because she listens to it every week, she's gonna remember this.
Good for her. Good for her.
She's gonna be like, "The fucking Arlene." And then she'll be like, "She shouted me out." Because my clients are fucking odd. But also that's why they're my clients. So,
I think it's lovely.
but all right. But this brings us to EMDR, and that is our doctor of traumatology specialty. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, I
Let's
love
talk about
EMDR.
it.
I love it. So
Yeah.
eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Oh, just saying the words makes me so happy and excited. Thank you, Shapiro, for all of your gloriousness when creating this therapeutic modality. Ah, it is
Now you
wonderful.
sound like an EMDR therapist.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. And the great part of it is sometimes people are like, I don't know if it's working or not. And then I'll be like, well, did you remember the 1 year anniversary? No, that did pass by, didn't it? Yeah. Yeah. That's because we brought that memory and those emotions together, process them together, how your brain was supposed to do it because of that false safety that your brain decided that it needed to do in the moment to protect you and keep you safe. Your brain is a double-edged sword like that. Let me tell you what, it thinks it's protecting you, but in the long run is actually hurting you. So EMDR, we bring those two things together, process it, get you through it. It is not easy. It is not an easy therapy, but the success rate that I have had with it, amazing. I always tell people give me like 5 to 8 sessions of just straight EMDR and you'll start noticing something. But you just got to get to that 5 and beyond point because it is tough. It is hard. You're going right back to it and you're reliving the experience. I always remind them that you're not physically going back, you're just mentally and emotionally going to be there. So don't forget to ground yourself like, hey, no, actually it is September 23rd, it is not that day, not that time, not in that environment, not that person. So it is a heavy therapeutic modality, but absolutely glorious, chef's kiss, 10 out of 10 would recommend.
I like to call it, for lack of a more politically correct term, the creeper weed of therapeutic trauma modalities because it creeps up on you. You leave the session feeling like, what just happened to me?
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple days later, you're like, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
this just happened to me. And then a few days later, you're like, wow, this really helped. This really, really, really helped me, and it takes some time to like really wrap your mind around how much the connection between, the sessions and processing and all of that really do work.
Yes, it does. And what I love is when clients say, my fill in the physical illness here has really decrease since we've been started EMDR. And I was like, well, that's because trauma hides in the body, my friend. It hides in your physical self. So I had this middle school girl that came in, was bullied really badly, started developing shaking leg syndrome. Like her legs would get numb, tingly, shake, and then like kind of give out on her anytime that she would like go to school or have school events or anything like that. And I was like, I was like, well, let's do EMDR. Let's see where we're at. So we do EMDR on the bullying, and that was 3 years ago. Have not had one shaking leg incident since we healed that memory.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
I love it. I love the physical relief, not just the mental, emotional relief, but the physical relief that my EMDR patients see.
Yeah, I get it. It is like it's a. I don't know about you guys, but like when you're going through it, when you're going through treating trauma, and like your clients are getting frustrated because it's hard,
Yes.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I prep mine obviously beforehand. This is gonna be hard. It's gonna be messy. At some point, you're gonna tell me to fuck off.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
But no, that's like when we're doing the thing. Like that's when we're really doing it. When you want to tell me to go fuck myself. Like that's it. And I know they don't believe me till we get there. And then they're like, "Oh, I want to tell you I fucking hate you." Okay. Yeah. And I'm like, "It's also okay to hate me right now. It's fine. I will figure this out." Um, but you're right, Alex. It's that at the end of it, it's the physical relief, it's the emotional relief, it's watching people learn how to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Just
That's
seeing the overwhelmed and the physicalness and the emotions, the all consuming dissipate and just kind of dissolve to where they're like, I feel free. It's phenomenal.
you
It
know, like all
really
of
is.
a sudden life feels manageable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mentioned at the beginning of the series when I was on about Stolero and Carr, and please stop eating my pizza. Puppy, sorry. Um
Listen, we just randomly have pets interrupt this podcast on a regular. It's fine.
um his theory is a psychosubjective kind of treatment of trauma where he looks for what he calls the psychosubjective key, that one specific moment where things just snapped, everything just kind of happened. And I don't want to say, I hate saying the word broken because I don't think that trauma means we're broken. I usually try to go with everything just kind of bent and swirled, insert whatever, terminology the person wants to use there. Things just went kind of wonky. And seeing a person touch on that, whatever modality that we're using to treat it, and recognize that that is the moment, and then be able to kind of confront it and come back from that and feel like they have not just like an empowerment over it, but like they have their life back, is so, to me, that's fulfilling. I when I started school, like I studied combat related PTSD from the time that I started my bachelor's through my master's and so on and so forth. I still keep up with the research because trauma has been my big thing too for ever. And it just, we all seem to have such human experiences with it. All of us, it's subjective, objective, however you want to look at it. And being able to help people connect with and then reclaim their lives in spite of the obstacles that they have overcome is probably part of why I do what I do. The biggest part of why I do what I do.
It's fantastic. Couldn't have said it better myself. That was amazing.
I think what's interesting is at last studied, please know this. So we're looking at least a couple years at this point. But for PTSD, about every 5 out of 100 adults had PTSD in any given year.
That's a lot.
In 2020, 13 million Americans had PTSD. And that's 5 years ago. Just keep that in mind. And statistically, women now are more likely to develop PTSD than men. Because we're, I don't know, diagnosing it for women where we used to just diagnose it as something men got when they served. That's the change.
Talk.
That's the change, by the way. That's the change. It's not that women are magically just getting more trauma. We're just identifying that women, have trauma. I know, crazy. It's fine. But that's what has happened. That's where the data is. And we're talking about just PTSD. We're not talking about experiencing something traumatic, having trauma, living life fundamentally with trauma that just shifts your perspectives, shifts how you live your life. We're talking about diagnosable PTSD, and 100 episodes now, it feels like ago, we talked about the difference between big T and little t trauma, and what that looks like. So being able to identify like the number of people who experience trauma, that number is exponentially higher.
That's interesting to me, but not surprising. If one of my big loves is social psychology. I wanted to be a social psychologist more than a therapist. It just kind of went a different route to go around because I still want to get my doctorate in social psychology, TBH. But it makes sense to me in that perspective because a lot of what we're looking at in society is chaos. We're looking at a lot of chaos, and I think that a lot of people, because of, and I'm just curious, and this is just a hypothesis here, but I'm curious if as a result of, because you said 2020, right? I'm curious if as a result of COVID and the like access to remote healthcare, remote mental health care has increased people being able to reach out from their homes and not have to go somewhere and feel a little bit more secure in anonymity, et cetera, to have screenings done that might increase those numbers.
Definitely possible. 100%. What I'm interested to know, social psychology person,
Mhm.
is the impact of social media on trauma,
That too, 100%.
because I'm old. I'm older than Google.
You are not old,
I'm older than Google. That makes me old these days.
Lord.
I was there when the Google was born. I
I remember when it was a baby.
was there in its infancy. Anyways, anyways, back in my day, um, uh, being have is the having access to all of the things. Like, I might have known we were at war in another country, but I wasn't seeing images all the time of us being at war. I wasn't seeing starving babies all the time in another country. This is
Uh,
what I think about when I think about the impacts of social media and trauma, of the information that is constantly funneled all the time.
That's a good question. Alex, I'm curious about your thoughts on this because to screen for PTSD, there is that specific question about being repeatedly exposed to details about that. So it does bring into question that, but are we desensitized or are we being harmed? What are your, I'm really curious what your thoughts are because that is a really good question.
I actually talk about this with my clients all the time. Our brains were not wired to have this amount of instant gratification at our fingertips. We are not meant to be able to consume this much negativity, and it has skyrocketed depression, anxiety, adjustment disorder, social anxiety, fears, OCDs, all the things. Now, as for PTSD from social media, there's also that question of, have you witnessed
Mhm.
a near-death experience, or have you witnessed traumatic, that secondary, secondary trauma, the secondhand trauma that we get? That is very heavy
Yeah.
on social media, because you can just literally Google someone getting beheaded, and then there you go, you watch that. And sometimes it just stumbles upon your feed, and you can see horrific acts being done. So that kind of stuff right there heavily impacts the well-being of our mental health. I mean, our brain wasn't even wired to be able to have instant gratification for the way that we look. We were only meant to have access to, like, our body imagery passing by water or passing by a window and stuff like that. But mirrors in the social media for body imagery and all of that has also created this huge adjustment disorder. And I've seen a lot of eating disorders because of social media as well. Because we are not meant to have access to every person and what they look like and what we look like and all of that. Our brain's just not wired that way. So social media has definitely created a heavy mental health toll. Back whenever there was just like newspaper routes, radio, stuff like that, we were so much healthier with our mental health. But now it's just, that instant
Oh,
gratification, having access to the world at our fingertips. We're just not meant to consume that amount of negativity.
why do I feel very boomery when I'm about to say that the social media is bad for us?
But I mean, that was a great question and it's a fair point. And I agree with you, Alex. I 100% agree with you because like against my consent, watched what happened to Charlie Kirk, and because I don't know if it's because I'm me or if because I was just in shock or just abject horror, it just replayed and replayed, and I was just like, and I remember thinking, I was just watching a video about cooking. And
Yeah.
the video ended, and now I'm watching that. Um,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that
We're not,
happening recently is actually a very valid point. Um, and regardless of where you fall politically, like the event itself is horrific,
yeah.
sure.
right? Like,
It could be any violent video though.
correct. Like,
Like that poor girl on the train getting
Yes,
stabbed.
yes,
yes.
Yeah.
Or,
yeah.
some kind of video captured on the inside of a school while there's an ongoing school shooting.
I've seen too many of those.
Yeah, I have too. And they are posted and we are subjected to them, as you pointed out, Alex, by, without our consent.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're right. Like, yeah.
And it's, like I said, our brain's not meant to consume that. We're not even, like I said, we're not even meant to have like this much access to us, like ourselves, with mirrors and cameras and everything. And then you add in all of the negativity and cruelness of the world. I mean, yeah, trauma, adjustment disorder, social anxiety, OCD, fears, all of that, depression, anxiety, it just, it skyrockets because of social media.
Yeah, that checks.
Mm-hmm.
That checks. Mostly just like, yeah, it's just one of those random thoughts I get, how, because you can't, I know people, what, oh, you doom scroll, but I don't know about you, but I don't think I can get my algorithm to just be cats and dogs.
No, I can't either.
I've tried.
Same.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
like
pretty
I mentioned
sure,
in
like,
the
well,
I was
yeah, you
watching.
were watching a cooking video. I'm pretty sure I cannot get my algorithm to just be funny. Like I can't. It doesn't care. Uh, it finds the things anyway. So, um,
I am a big fan, and I say this to the people with whom I work all the time. With everything, there is a balance. And I deeply believe that. Um, and as much as I love social media, because I do, I also hate it. Because again, with everything, there's a balance. Has hands. Um, but we are getting to a point where I think it's becoming problematic in a lot of areas. I'm diagnosing PTSD in children, and I'm diagnosing body dysmorphic disorder in children.
yeah,
And I'm feeling some type of way about doing both of those because it's like your children, your children, you
I feel,
know.
yeah, those ones are hard because, like, you're right. You're a baby.
Hmm.
You should be doing baby things.
Exactly.
Even if you're 12, you should be out doing 12-year-old things.
No, exactly. Because I mean, I love those memes where it's like, and when I say I love them, I mean, like, ironically, because, it kind of really does highlight what we're talking here, where it's like me at 12, when I was like, my bangs were like rooster crow, dating myself here. Uh, and then 12-year-olds now are like really playing into all of the like social connotations that Alex was just talking about that involve instant gratification and looking at ourselves and all of that stuff, and it causes one to sit and pause because again, dating myself here. That wasn't what, I mean, there were a lot of social, you know, expectations when I was like 12, but it was not nearly as harsh as it is now.
The only thing, as a parent of teens, I want you to know shopping for my teen daughter is a fucking shit show. I can't, it is such a hard thing to find clothes that fit a 14-year-old girl, that are made for a 14-year-old girl, that are not something that look like something a 21-year-old would wear. Clothes that they are for her are not things she wants to wear because she's 14, nor do I want her wearing. Not everything needs to show her skin, all of it. And that is problematic when I go shopping for her. So we're often shopping in like, I mean, luckily for her, she likes the baggy stuff right now. So we're into that. So that's helpful. But like, it's not, yes, there is the kid part of it, but it's also like what you have access to when you go to shop, because it's a fucking shit show. I don't enjoy watching buying my daughter shorts, because I trying to buy her a pair of actual shorts that don't show her fucking ass. Good fucking luck. She's 14.
So how, the question becomes then, how do we, and this is my actual real question, because I I've treated children with PTSD before, but how
Mhm.
how do you, I mean, when they get younger and younger and younger, you know, you have to kind of, you know, adapt and adapt and adapt because of the social media and because of things like that, and because, you know, of the way that society is. So when we're talking about treatment, how do we do that? What do we do? You know, the younger they get and the younger they get. I think the youngest person that I have ever diagnosed with PTSD has been recent. She's 9. She's 9 years old. And I'm not gonna lie, when I did that this week, my heart literally broke because she was a 9-year-old girl.
No, I get that. I think, and Alex will correct me with her doctor degree, you know, because she's the doctor here. She doesn't just play one on TV or in podcasts. She's an actual doctor.
Girl, own that. Love it.
Um, it's like everything else. You're just gonna modify the modality to be age appropriate, and that means in some things that you're just gonna probably have to like change some things, because every 9-year-old isn't the same.
Yep, I've had a and if you hear the puppy in the background, sorry guys. I've had as young as 4 that I've done EMDR with. Um, witnessed their father pass away. So with that, what we did with the eye movements is I got him to get a toy truck, and he just moved the truck back and forth on the desk in front of him. So it was, it was more apt for him, fit better with him and what he was needing, but we were still able to do that modality. I don't think there's going to be a way for us to stop the exposure because internet is just getting more and more advanced. So it's going to be, even more and more accessible. But what we can do If we can't stop it from happening, we can help support them through it the best that we can, which is just what Arlene said is, you know, seeing the person in front of us and fitting our therapeutic modality to them, not making them fit the therapeutic modality.
No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. She is a tiny little artist, and her fear is of dying. And so I was like, why don't you draw that for me? And she was like, I don't know how. And I said, well, I don't know either, but I'm afraid of that too. So why don't we both draw that?
Nice. I love that.
So we're gonna show, not compare, but show each other our drawings next session.
Nice.
But you know, whatever,
love
whatever's clever when it comes to therapy sometimes.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to wrap it up with this. If you've stuck around this long and listened to all the episodes of trauma, and you are, in fact, struggling with trauma, we have discussed a variety of options. My suggestion is this: find somebody who specializes to treat trauma. They know what they're doing, regardless of the modality. If they don't specialize in treating trauma, they're probably not going to help you in the way you need. Because if they don't specialize in it, they probably don't enjoy it. They don't like it, so they're not going to want to. That's why they don't specialize in it. Because trauma is not everybody's cup of tea, unlike the three of us, apparently. Um, uh, but that's my biggest piece. Your two top modalities for treating trauma are EMDR and PE, which is prolonged exposure. So those are going to be the two top most effective for regardless of what your trauma is. Those are going to be the ones that's your gold standards of treating all trauma. So with that being said, I appreciate both of you hanging out tonight.
Loved it. Can't wait to come back.
Same.
If you enjoyed today's episode, follow us on Instagram at Unwinding Support or email us at unwindingmentalhealth@gmail.com.